July 2nd, 1937. Somewhere over the Central Pacific, a pilot and her navigator are watching the sunrise, knowing they have only a few hours of fuel remaining. Below them is an ocean spanning millions of square miles. Somewhere ahead is Howland Island, a strip of land less than 2 miles long. There are no other runways, no highways, and no second chances. Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan were flying toward one of the smallest targets on Earth. Missing it created a void that history has spent nearly 90 years trying to fill. When Amelia Earhart was born in late 19th century Kansas, young women were expected to follow rigid social rules. Earhart collected newspaper clippings of women succeeding in male-dominated professions and eventually took jobs to pay for her own flying lessons. By 1932, she was an international phenomenon. Taking off from Newfoundland in a red Lockheed Vega 5B, she flew through challenging weather and primitive navigation to land in Ireland 15 hours later, becoming the first woman to cross the Atlantic alone. Earhart demonstrated to millions of women that the limitations society placed on them were completely artificial. But the intense public spotlight meant every flight was scrutinized. When she decided to fly around the entire planet, she knew the journey would either be a spectacular triumph or a very public tragedy. To cross the globe, Earhart needed a specialized machine. Her Lockheed 10E Electra, dubbed the Flying Laboratory, was modified with massive extra fuel tanks. Beside her was Fred Noonan, a highly experienced navigator whose job was to guide them across thousands of miles. Navigation in the 1930s relied entirely on human calculation. Without satellite networks or digital displays, Noonan had to track their speed, estimate the wind drift, and use a sextant to measure the stars. By the time they reached Lae, New Guinea, they had flown 22,000 miles, only 7,000 remained. But the next leg required them to fly roughly 2,500 miles straight across the open ocean toward Howland Island. This was an engineering problem with zero tolerance for error. If the wind shifted unexpectedly or a calculation was off by a single degree, they would completely miss the island. After flying through the night, the sun rose on July 2nd. The aircraft was growing lighter as its fuel burned away, and the Coast Guard cutter Itasca sat near Howland Island, waiting to guide them in. The two crews could hear each other periodically, but they were trapped by the limits of their equipment. Differences in frequency use and transmission timing prevented the ship from establishing a two-way signal to tell Earhart which way to turn. This knob shows the desperate situation at 8:43 in the morning. In her final known transmission, Earhart reported that they were flying on a north and south line of position. They were running a search pattern, hoping to cross paths with the island. But a twin-engine aircraft can only remain in the sky for a fixed amount of time. As they searched that line, the fuel eventually ran dry, and the radio fell completely silent. The United States military launched a massive rescue operation. Ships and planes scoured an area roughly the size of Texas, looking for any sign of a life raft or floating debris, but they found absolutely nothing. The Pacific Ocean absorbed all physical traces of the flight. In the absence of evidence, generations of historians and enthusiasts have spent decades arguing over what happened next. Based on the known facts, the Smithsonian identifies the most reasonable explanation as fuel exhaustion. Earhart and Noonan simply failed to locate Howland Island, and the Electra came down somewhere in the ocean. An alternative hypothesis suggests they landed on the remote reef of Nikumaroro, but the physical evidence remains disputed. Other researchers believe they were captured by Japanese forces, but no definitive proof has ever been established. The search for answers continues today. The National Archives recently began declassifying thousands of government records related to the disappearance. But historical research requires patience. Uncovering a new document rarely provides an immediate answer. Despite nearly 90 years of looking, the final resting place of Amelia Earhart is still completely unknown. It is easy to view Amelia Earhart only through the lens of July 2nd, 1937, but focusing entirely on how she vanished ignores what she actually accomplished while she was here. She chose a life of extreme risk when the world told her she didn't belong in the sky. By repeatedly confronting those boundaries, she helped clear the path for every woman who engineers aircraft, commands airliners, or travels into space today. Some mysteries are solved by finding the answer. Others survive because the evidence disappears. The disappearance made her immortal, but her ambition and her total refusal to accept the impossible is what made her important.